Bruxelles, je t'aime. Tu m'avais manqué. Bruxelles, je t'aime. Bruxelles, je t'aime. T'es ma préférée. Bruxelles, je t'aime. Bruxelles, je t'aime.
Hello there, welcome to Brussels, my love, your News' political chat show with me, Maeve McMahon. Thank you so much for tuning in for this latest edition, broadcasting from Strasbourg. Coming up on the show, a tragedy for green policies, but a relief for Conservatives. An EU law to stop deforestation has been put on hold. The regulation is supposed to hinder producers of palm oil, timber, coffee and beef from sacrificing trees in search of profits, and was actually meant to come into force this December. We hear the pros and the cons of this one-year delay and check what other environmental policies are also in the firing line. And halfway through Hungary's controversial EU presidency, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán visited Strasbourg this week. He joined allies from his new Patriots for Europe, a group that promises to take Brussels back from the bureaucrats and return it to the European people. We break down his fiery speech and hear why Brussels is taking Budapest to court. A warm welcome to our guests this weekend. Sander Schmidt, Dutch MEP from the Farmer Citizen Movement, a member of the European People's Party.
Thank you very much.
Anna Cavazzini, a Green member from Germany. And Emma Wiesner, Swedish MEP with the Renew Europe group. So lovely to have you all with us. Thank you so much. Curious to hear your views, but first, let's just hear why that EU deforestation law has been put on hold.
One step forward and two backflips back. That's the fate of the EU deforestation law that Greenpeace called the most significant achievement of the EU Green Deal. The regulation took years to agree and imposes due diligence obligations on all European companies importing raw materials into the single market. The goal is to fight the environmental destruction that's fueled by our consumption. Under pressure from some member states, the EU Commission has said it will take another year to prepare for the changes. In the short term, that's good news for the farmers and retailers who were crying out with concern. But it begs the question once again, how much longer can we exploit nature and use it for free?
So, Anna Cavazzini, let's start with you. You're also the chair of the Committee on the Internal Market. You've put out a statement calling this news a tragedy. Explain.
You have seen in the pictures and the images, we are in a global crisis of deforestation. At the moment, forest fires are really in the Amazon destroying animals, destroying livelihoods of indigenous people. And we all know that we need the forests for our future. And delaying this legislation, this important legislation that is really a cornerstone of the Green Deal, I think is a bad news, because we cannot lose any time in order to make our supply chains more sustainable. And with this delay, we lose time.
Of course, because this came into force back in June 2023. It was given 18 months to come into force, but of course now we'll have to wait another 12 months. It's a big topic for Sweden, given 68% of Sweden is covered by forests. I saw the forest industry have welcomed this delay. What is your take?
But we have to stay realistic also as policymakers. I had big problems when this law was regulated in the first place, simply because we put too much legal action into guidelines put by the Commission. And now we see the result of that. 3 key cornerstones of the regulation is still not in place. There's no digital scheme to put together the data. The data system, it's simply not there. For Sweden, that's 2 billion data points to be collected manually if we don't have a digital scheme in place. The country assessment, the high-risk, low-risk country and so on, which is a cornerstone of this regulation, is still not in place. That's already delayed. And so much of the important work of these regulations is in the guidelines. And they are also not finished and fully produced by the Commission. So there are like 3 big holes in this law. And that speaks its language. We cannot implement and put laws into force when we have 3 giant missing blocks of the legislation.
Yeah, but then you have to ask Commission President von der Leyen, because she held it back. Everything was ready, the Commission had everything ready, and it was not published for 6 months.
And Ursula von der Leyen took that final decision, so she decided what to prioritise and not. Your political party, the European People's Party, they've called it a bureaucratic monster. But is it not time to start putting nature first, as opposed to making profits?
I think we ought to put purpose above politics here. So that we all support, I think, Emma also supports the purpose that we want to prevent deforestation in the Amazon and in other areas of the world. We want to keep forest, carbon sinks, biodiversity, but this bureaucratic monster is actually threatening to undermine the political and societal support for action in this field, because it's putting our small farms but also other businesses at jeopardizing their competitiveness, and also confronting them with problems and questions which have not yet been solved. So it's an example of, in my opinion, of the wrong course of the European Parliament and the European institutions over these 5 years. I think we'll see more legislation being brought to a reality check, like a corporate sustainability reporting directive. There's many other examples.
Well, there are other examples of different regulations and legislations being put on hold, like the pesticides bill as well. But just regarding the business sector, of course, Shandor, they have a similar view to you, and we wanted to hear from them. So over in Brussels, we had a chat with Business Europe's Luisa Santos and also Vollers, which is a logistics company. Take a listen.
Companies want to be ready for the implementation, and for this, the postponement is a positive move, because a lot of the tools that ensure an effective implementation of the legislation are not there yet. Companies expect that during this time, this 1 year, we will have all the necessary guidance, that the authorities also in member states will be ready to make sure that in 1 year we will all be able to implement the legislation in the best way. Companies are, of course, very much committed to fight deforestation.
We're more than satisfied. There was quite some unclarity yet of how are we going to implement, what system does it look like, and how we will get the information from the owners, from the shippers. So with the extension, for us, it is a reassuring that we will, once we go in there, we will go in there with the correct vision.
So Anna Powell is there and Luisa Santos making a similar point to you, that the clarity is just not there. Are you mindful of these arguments, and how will this legislation, when it does finally become implemented, impact small farmers in Rwanda, for example, or in the Congo Basin?
I agree with Emma and my colleague that the guidelines and a lot of tools that are necessary for the law were not in place. But again, the Commission held it back for a couple of months. It could have been published much earlier, and then we wouldn't have to face the delay. Where I don't agree that this is a whole bureaucratic monster, the legislation is very, very clear. It says if a product is coming from an area that was recently deforested, it cannot be imported or it cannot be brought on the EU internal market. And I think you cannot have a clearer legislation to fight deforestation. So I think it is a big success of last term that we put this legislation forward. And I think it's not at all a bureaucratic monster. It's very, very clear, very simple. And I think the colleague has to explain me, if not this law, how else would you fight global deforestation? We cannot just say we abolish everything and let climate change and deforestation continue.
If I may, I haven't, if my reply to that, I haven't pleaded in favor of abolishing any legislation in this regard. I think we need to review it, to review the practicability, and also listen to business. And that's what we haven't done these last 5 years. Listen to business and how to practically work towards the goal, which we all share. Because, as you know, even the EPP group supported action against deforestation, of course. And I personally also support this action. Actually, my country is one of the forerunners in preventing deforestation-related soy from entering the European Union. There's a Declaration of Amsterdam 2015. But this was drafted with business. We have to work with business also on guidelines which are achievable for businesses. And do not create legal uncertainty, because that's the reason why the Commission President withheld the guidelines and reviewed this regulation and came up with a postponement proposal.
Because what I think is happening here is also business getting the blame for the political mistakes that were made. I think simply too much of important policy instruments were put into guidelines. I mean, you can also blame Commission Commission, but we put the responsibility on the Commission. The digital scheme, for example, for one sawmill in Sweden, that would be about 800,000 data points to be collected and passed on. It says itself, you cannot do that manually. You need a digital system in place. That system was supposed to be now published the 14th of December. Do we really believe that industry can implement such a huge scheme and digital system in only 2 weeks? I mean, just arranging a meeting in this house takes a month. So asking industry to implement something in 2 weeks, it says itself it's impossible.
Even though there was that year and
needed.
a half, and the fear is now that it could be kicked into the air once more after this year passes.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the law is already there. Companies had already more than a year to prepare for the legislation. What I fear, and I think, and this is also what I hear a lot from businesses, the worst thing is to go always back and forth. So we decide on a law, we decide on a course, we decided to fight deforestation, we decided on the Green Deal. So let's stay on course. Let's not always do back and forth, doubt everything, because this will decrease the legal certainty for companies, and they need it so much to know where the direction is going.
I really agree that we have to fight and tackle deforestation, and I think we all agree in this studio that that's really important and one of the key areas. And we have also other regulations that these are replacing to combat that. But we cannot ask industry, without having guidelines in place, without having a system in place, to prepare for something. They don't know what to prepare for. The industries affected by this, because this doesn't only affect Brazil and South America, it affects industries in Europe, and they are preparing for something, but they don't know what to prepare, because the guideline simply wasn't there. So I think we have to be realistic. It's not about having the law or not, it's about when and how can we enforce it, and this simply wasn't good enough from our state. We should take full credibility for that, not blame industry.
Business loves certainty, they love clarity, they need to know how to get there.
Exactly. And this is something, if we want to achieve this purpose, the goal of this regulation, as a common goal, we share this purpose, the purpose of the regulation. But if we look at the replacement and spillover effects of this legislation, but also other pieces of legislation, we should really take time to review whether it's achievable for small businesses. I already heard, I heard scientists warn against the consequences of this regulation. And not so much.
But the consequences for the forests as well that are being completely destroyed, the statistics are frightening. And that's why NGOs, Shander, and environment groups are very frustrated with the delay in this implementation. And just to get their point of view, we spoke to the NGO Fern, who want to reduce our consumption of products that harm forests and, of course, as well, communities all across the world. Take a listen.
This law means that everything that arrives on European shelves in the concerned product groups would be legal and they would not stem from deforestation. If this law, the implementation, does not go ahead, consumers will still not know whether they have committed a crime by buying these products, because these products potentially stem from illegal deforestation or illegal production.
So Nicole Postecher, they're making the point that if we buy chocolates from Nestle, for example, or Ferrero Rocher, we're also complicit in this, even though we don't know it.
Absolutely, and I think it's very important to also bring in other perspectives, because, of course, the world is not only business. We all like businesses, but the world is not only business. The world is also forests, the world is indigenous people who live there. The world is also the global climate and the climate change we are facing. So I think we have to also bring this perspective in. And again, I was part of the negotiation team making this legislation under lead of the EPP. The EPP was very much in favor of the law. And again, it's very clear. It's very clear. It's very simple. So I don't see that it's not doable for businesses.
That's what's so confusing. Imagine our viewers. We have covered the negotiation part. We've covered a year and a half ago as this was sealed, and we all know how long it took. And the EPP were in those talks. And then suddenly we're unravelling.
And that's the difference between the EPP maybe and the Greens, that we do not put politics above the purpose, because if we have the facts from businesses, but also from the results on the grounds, the danger on the grounds of spillover effects, replacement effects, actually harming the forest and harming not only
signing up to deals and then chickening out of them.
We are prepared to self-criticize and to...
I don't want to say I told you so. But I actually told you so. I mean, I voted no to this regulation for that exact reason.
Yes. Yes, it's true. Well, I was not personally involved in this legislation as an MEP, of course. I'm newly elected, but I'm well aware of...
Blame your colleagues from the previous...
No, I'm not
but
blaming...
Let's just to go back to the concrete part of this legislation. How will it impact small farmers around the world? Are they ready? Will they receive training?
I hope so, but as I said, there are three very huge missing elements of the law still. Both the assessment of the countries, what country is a high risk, what is a low risk, what's a medium risk country, which is like the basis. Depending on the risk categorization, you have a set of rules that you have to apply. So not knowing what country you're dealing with, and this is also European countries we're talking about, that makes it really hard to follow. The guidelines, what happened when you harvested, you already done the harvest, and now you're going to produce a paper cup. How are you going to follow? And what is the data you need to report? Those guidelines were also missing, and the digital scheme was also missing. So, of course, it will impact.
And it's just worth pointing out as well to our viewers that this delay comes just as we go into the Biodiversity UN conference taking place in Colombia at the end of the month. Also, COP is taking place in Azerbaijan in a couple of weeks. The EU will be trying to stand on the world stage there, practicing what it's preaching, but really here the EU is failing at implementing its very own green deals and its promises to decarbonise, Anna.
Yes, I think the EU is responsible for 10% of the global forest destruction with its imports. So the EU has a huge responsibility also for being a leader in global biodiversity, in the fight for biodiversity. And I think exactly now having the postponement is a very bad sign also on the global stage, because of course other countries will also see this as a weakening, and I think this is not good in those times.
And we've seen countries, a couple of capitals, causing for a pause in regulation. Are you feeling in your group a sense of green fatigue?
Not at all. And we have so many pieces of Green Deal that we have to keep on fighting for and keep implementing, and so many holes in the green agenda we have to follow. This is not about having the law or not. This is about at what state we actually can implement the law and under what circumstances. And this law wasn't good enough. We did a political mistake in writing a law that simply had too many missing elements. We put that in the hands of the Commission and we expected them to deliver within a year. That didn't happen, and now we have to take responsibility for that. This is not about not combating deforestation. The law is still intact. It will still happen, but we have to give industries the tools and guidance they need in order to do it. We cannot just give them nothing and hope that they will solve everything for us. We have to take accountability as politicians.
Sander, what about you? How are you going to make sure that you're able to reach those targets that we've set out for ourselves here as the EU, but also bring your voters, the farmers in the Netherlands, along?
Yes, I think practicability is very important, but also to re-evaluate all legislation which has passed. Because, again, we're now in this situation because it has been proven by the calls of businesses, by the calls of farmers, by the calls of third countries that this legislation doesn't work. So we have to self-criticize. Yeah, I'm here with two MEPs who are re-elected, who were also responsible for these files in the previous term. And I think we ought to more profoundly reassess what's necessary, what we can do. Because if I may ask Ms. Cavazzini, if it's not in place, if we want to share this purpose, we need to find new ways and not create spillover effects, replacement, then it's symbolism. It's only
let's hear from Anna from the Greens.
I find the argument that the legislation is not working, while it's not even in place, intellectually not correct, I have to say. Now we did a lot of legislation on the Green Deal, and we need to see how is the effect, and also if it's working or not. But we cannot say, before the law is even in place, that it's not working. I mean, this is too simple, I'm sorry.
Well, if companies are in a situation of legal uncertainty, I mean, we have a legality principle here. As co-legislators, we should not create a situation in which our businesses and farmers are put in a situation of illegality and legal uncertainty. Then we should self-criticize as an institution
and that's exactly what we're doing with this law. But you said reviewing the entire green agenda, everything we did last month.
No, I didn't
that's
say that.
Counterproductive. That's not what business wants.
No,
what business wants is clarity and certainty and predictability. And then say going back and we have to review all the laws that we took. That is absolutely not what business is asking for.
I didn't say all, but there's many excessive elements in these pieces of legislation which we will face them. CSRD, CSDDD will see a lot of examples of businesses, also consumers being confronted with the consequences. I refer to the Draghi report, which identified the bureaucratic burden in the European Union as hindering our competitiveness. and it's something we have to address, also in all honesty. So that's what we plead.
And consumers want that. There's so many petitions online there from consumers calling for more change and calling for more protection when it comes to areas like forests. So thank you so much for that. We will, on that point, bring this conversation to an end. If you are interested in those topics, of course, keep an eye out for that biodiversity conference taking place in Colombia very soon. Euronews will be there on the ground. But for now, stay with us, because after the break, we'll be hearing why Viktor Orbán caused ruptures here in the Parliament this week. See you soon. Welcome back to Brussels, my love. I'm Maeve McMahon, and along with our panel, Sander Schmidt, Anna Cavazzini and Emma Wiesner, we're taking a look back at the big news of the week here in Strasbourg. And one we wanted to pick apart was this: the Hungarian Prime Minister addressing the European Parliament plenary this Wednesday. Viktor Orbán used the moment in the spotlight to criticise the EU institutions to their core and highlight all that was wrong with the EU establishment. Some MEPs played Candy Crush to show how much they disliked that speech, and others called him a dictator. So I'd like to ask the panel, were you in the room? Did you engage in the speech? What did you think?
I was in the room. I listened to the debate.
And?
I was astonished. His rudeness in a way, and also incapability of answering any questions and playing the very much Orbán game. A little bit like the fox in a hen house.
But for once, I thought it was so nice to have the Hungarian Prime Minister in the room, because he's so talked about in Brussels and Strasbourg that I thought it was good to see him there speaking. How did you feel about the speech?
Yes, I think it was also too confrontational. So in the style and in general, also the replies to it, I think today was not a good day for the reputation of our institution and the institution in general, I think, because we saw the radical left and the radical right creating disturbances, shouting, singing. So in general, I think it was not a day to remember. It is entirely different from the situation I still remember when I was a policy advisor, when Orbán was still regular, part of the EPP group and in the center, and also more moderate. So I think it's a pity how this developed.
So you felt embarrassed?
Yeah.
What about you, Anna?
I think it's a bad thing that we gave him such a big stage. We as Greens, we were always against inviting him because he is destroying democracy and rule of law at home. He is shrinking the space for civil society and journalists. He is also very, very corrupt and the best friend of Putin. Yeah? So I think it's a bad thing to give him such a big stage with a lot of TV cameras.
But isn't it better to engage, to talk to him?
Yeah, I mean,
instead of talking about him.
I think, contrary to what my colleague has said, I think the parliament as such, excluding the far right, reacted in a great way. I think there was, and that, you know, if I follow the debate in the German media, there was so much praise for how the parliament showed its teeth, how the parliament was really strong in defending democracy and pointing to the really big problems Orbán is creating for us. Also, for example, for European businesses.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, this is the house of democracy, and they are president of the European Council. And if not this house can follow the rules of democracy, who can? So I think this
he's destroying democracy.
This really puts the finger on that we have to use our democratic tools to be much stronger on him. We have to be smarter, harder, and more effective in facing Orbán, in really limiting the voting rights, hit him where it hurts, really go into economic sanctions. The only thing that worked so far is economic sanctions against him, and we have to find a way, being smarter, working around how we cannot be fooled.
Would you agree with that?
What I think we need to lower the temperature of the debate a bit. Also, here has been said that democracy is more or less abolished in Hungary. I've got many praiseworthy, courageous colleagues in my EPP group from the new Tisza party, opposition party, who on content are maybe similar to many positions of the Fidesz on agriculture and environment. Yeah. I also like the Hungarian ministers' contributions in our committees in this regard. But we need to lower the temperature of the debate and focus on the Hungarian presidency, which is a fact, and not hijack the presidency for a political debate which has been ongoing for years. We need rule of law to be enforced, but let's also not give the Hungarian Prime Minister the platform to play the victim, because there was many legitimate criticism also voiced. I must say I can fully support the words used by Mr. Procaccini on behalf of the ECR group. Mr. Weber also warned against the Russian visa, but Procaccini as well, the geopolitical positioning of Hungary, which is really really worrying, also to us.
Well,
but
Viktor
we need
Orbán,
to lower the temperature of the
platform
debate.
inside the plenary, but also on Tuesday he gave a very, very lengthy press conference for 2 hours, outlining his views on migration, the Ukraine-Russia war and the upcoming US elections, saying that he would consume bottles of champagne if Donald Trump were to win those elections. And he also said that his group, Patriots for Europe, should take Brussels back from the bureaucrats and return it to the European people. When asked by a journalist if this attitude was a little bit too aggressive, this is what he answered.
I think we have a very friendly attitude to the European Union. So again, I would like to underline the real differences between those politicians who think that European unity means that everybody has to shut up and follow the unity which is defined somebody. You know, we don't know exactly who. Or to represent your national interest and then ready to make deals. So Europe is not in Brussels. Europe is not in Strasbourg. Europe is in Rome, Berlin, Prague, Budapest, Vienna, Paris. You know, it's an alliance of nation states. So that's our attitude. It's not adversity. I think this is the normal attitude.
So Viktor Orbán there. It was a little bit like this for 2 hours, a very long press conference, as I said. But it must be said that Patriots for Europe is now the 3rd biggest group in the Parliament. How have the dynamics changed here since that happened? Anna?
If I compare it to last term, of course, the extreme right grew and is also getting more aggressive, more loud in plenary. So you see it much more. It was a little bit at the beginning when
really object to
Brexit
the framing
has not
parties
happened yet. So when some of the extreme right from the UK were still there were also a lot of shouting. But now I think you see...
Everyone, you're classifying parties which are populist.
So now you wanted me to finish, let you finish, and now you're interrupting me. So can I also finish my sentence?
Right, because in political theory, extreme right is associated with Nazism. So
let's
that's
go back.
a bit too...
Anna, finish your point, please.
I wanted to say that they have a much bigger appearance, they are louder, and of course they're also more courageous than in the last term, and of course it is because they got bigger in the parliament, and I think it's already poisoning a little bit the debate in the parliament, but you clearly saw that the majority of the democratic parties in the parliament still prevail and also stick together, and that's good.
And just moving away from the noise and the theatre of this week, what about the actual Hungarian presidency, Emma? How has that been?
No, but it's been, turbulent, as you see. He obviously doesn't even want to be in this union, and he's doing everything he can to go against the principle of democracy and EU cooperation. As I said, it's like inviting the fox into the henhouse. So I'm sorry that we had to have him here, but that puts really the finger on that we need to do more in standing up for our European cooperation, and we have to limit their voting rights. We are now looking at reviewing the treaties to include more member states, but we need to have a function also to say goodbye and exclude member states when needed.
And on that point, which I'm sure will trigger a lot of reaction, we can close this conversation. Thank you so much to our MEPs for being with us here, and thank you for watching. Take care and see you soon here on Euronews. Welcome to Brussels, my love. I'm Maeve McMahon and I'm in Strasbourg, sitting down with MEPs Chandler Schmidt, Anna Cavazzini and Emma Wiesner. And while MEPs this week were debating a number of issues, one topic looming in the corridors here was an EU Commission idea to extend the smoking ban currently in place in pubs and indoor spaces to public spaces like parks, beaches and outdoor cafes, even bus stops. The idea is to bring about a smoke-free generation, and the Commission wants governments to even include e-cigarettes and nicotine-free products. So let's ask our panel what they think of this recommendation. It's not an obligation, just a recommendation. Will it fly?
Well, I'm not in general in favor of a ban in private areas, but in public areas, specifically around schools and where children are visiting, I think it makes a lot of sense. So in that sense...
But bus stops, playgrounds, outdoor spaces?
Yes, it's good to discourage people in general from smoking. Even e-vapors, e-cigarettes also make people addicted to nicotine. So it's good to have bans there in place. But of course, you have to respect also private spaces. And we have to clearly not put everything on one heap. So I think e-cigarettes are a different category.
Different category. What about you, Anna? What's your take here?
I think it's good that the Commission makes these proposals, but I think it's also good that the Member States can decide this themselves in the matter of subsidiarity. But I think probably structurally there is still much more to do when it comes to tobacco and health. And also we will revise in the European Parliament at some point the tobacco directives. And there you could think about natural aromas that are very addictive for younger children or youth. Should we not probably ban those? Should we probably also align the tax policies in order to make sure that smoking is expensive?
As a Swede, I must say I'm a little bit relieved because, like, in Sweden, the debate has been mainly about the snus and the white snus. And here we have an example of a regulation that's being effective. I mean, the smoking in public areas is really a health issue. But most of the Swedes are more worried about these. Like
Snus that you stick in.
Yeah, it's small pouches of nicotine.
Very sensitive.
And they have an exemption. When we entered the EU, Sweden had an exemption. And it's been a lot of frustration in the public if EU would then target these. But I think here we have a clear example. Focus on the policy measures that makes the most sense, that are most effective, and not go after people's everyday to day snooze.
OK, well, that's actually an interesting point that we wanted to ask people because, of course, in cities like Brussels, despite the weather, hail or rain, people love to sit outside. So we actually went out to the streets and turned the Euronews microphone on people to ask them how they felt about this outright ban on smoking and vaping.
It will be better.
I don't really enjoy the smell of it, so it's a nice idea for me.
Well, I'm a non-smoker, so I wouldn't be like personally affected, but I guess it's a big like limitation of freedom. So I don't think it's necessary to like go to this extreme.
I think it would be a good thing for health in Europe in general. I think that you see a lot of vapes coming up because they work with a different flavor, so it makes smoking a bit more nice than like a smoky cigarette, I think.
I don't know, I think it's free choice of people if they want to smoke, and I mean no one is smoking inside, so outside is not a problem for me.
I will still smoke outside. If it's harming someone next to me, I'll be smoking away from him. I won't care about this rule because I would smoke anyway.
So there you go. I'll smoke anyway, an array of views. And actually, I've spotted some MEPs and MEP assistants smoking here in their offices and at meetings. So it's quite funny that the legislators themselves are engaging in this. Your reaction to that clip?
Yes, I think it shows how it can be divisive, these kinds of recommendations. And that's why I plead in favor of a distinction between certain categories. You plead in favor of a respect for a certain Swedish category. But I think we need to combat smoking addiction. But for some heavy smokers, sometimes these vaping cigarettes are a less harmful alternative to not get rid of the nicotine addiction, but to lose the harmful effects of other contents in regular cigarettes. So it's not a black and white discussion.
It's not a black and white, but what is clear, we have statistics from the WHO that say there's 8 million deaths worldwide due to tobacco.
Yes, but WHO experts all agree that you can put regular cigarettes and tobacco on in the same category as e-cigarettes. So that's also, I really want to share and repeat the statement of our EPP Envy coordinator, Mr. Dr. Peter Lies, who's a medical doctor himself, who also insisted on this distinction. So
but I think we also have to recognize the cultural differences here and how much this would interfere in people's day-to-day lives. Thanks to the snus, we have one of the lowest smoking rates.
Whereas in Bulgaria, they have the highest rate in the European Union.
And I think we have to take also notice of that, and as policymaker have a fingerspitzengefühl on when to regulate and not. I think in private areas in general, I think we should be very careful imposing bans and so on, and also take the cultural differences into consideration.
But that's why the Commission leaves it to the Member States. That's why I said at the beginning, I think that's good. But I think one thing we should still look at is basically also the single-use vapes. It creates a huge amount of garbage. It's also a little bit useless, so probably that's also something.
Let's save that for another topic. But actually, you mentioned Sweden, your country. It's also the only country in the European Union that has implemented this full ban. And we wanted to hear how it was going, so we had a chat with the bar owner of Bar Europa, which is in Stockholm. His name is Löwe Kruk Atling. Take a listen.
I'm that old, so I remember when they talked about when we regulated the indoor smoking, and that was a much bigger fuss about. So I would say when the outdoor came, people were like, what, really? Why is that even necessary? We're outside, da da da. But then again, we're Swedish people and we always do what we're told. So I think it took a week and then nobody cared.
Ludwig Atling there making the point that everyone made a fuss for a while, but then they did what they were told. But
as I said, if it would have gone for the snus as it was first, also in the tobacco directive, this would have been a completely different story. And that's why I think we have to be sensible for the cultural differences.
Because can you imagine the Spanish, the Greeks, the Italians who spend their summers on their beautiful terraces in their chiringuitos on the beach being told off about this? I don't think it would go down well.
Yeah, and also to bring in some more cultural differences, although you think the Germans also listen to what they're told. When we introduced the indoor ban in Germany, a lot of bars and a lot of cities made exemptions. So I think no one really took the ban very seriously. It took us a lot of years to be implemented.
Same in the Netherlands. But I do want to point also to what's a worrisome trend, that young women are increasingly smoking in several European member states. In Belgium, the percentage of young women, girls smoking, also not only e-cigarettes, which are increasingly popular, it's also a worrisome trend, but also a general.
Yeah. On that point, we can bring this very interesting conversation to an end. Thank you so much to our guests for being with us this weekend, to Sander Schmidt, Anna Cavazzini and Emma Wiesner. And thank you so much as well for watching. Any comments on any of the stories that we've covered, do reach out. BrusselsMyLove@Euronews is our email address. Take care and see you soon here on Euronews and, of course, on Euronews.com.